Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now this is Rage. If you've never played it, I'm sure you've heard of it, and if you have played it along with its sequel, Rage 2, then I wouldn't be surprised if you preferred the latter release. To me, Rage is pretty special. For starters, it runs at 60 frames per second on Xbox 360 and PS3, and considering that a lot of 7th gen console titles struggle to maintain 30, Rage was certainly a welcome addition to my PS3's library a decade ago. It wasn't for everyone, that's for sure, and despite my praise, I never got more than halfway into the story. But because it's 10 years old now, and a fraction of the price, I thought I'd finish what I started back in 2011, this time on PC. Rage is set in a post-apocalyptic world following the impact of an asteroid that's collided with Earth. It's definitely worth a play if you've never done so before, but it's also interesting from a technical standpoint. Rage uses something called mega textures. The in-game environments and settlements are made up of huge 128k by 128k textures that are compressed and streamed in as needed by the engine, and thanks to the auto balancer, these are rendered at quality levels that reflect the hardware in use to try and target the 60 FPS cap. In my opinion, this is what gives Rage its aesthetic. Rage looks like Rage and nothing else. Mega textures also mean everything is unique. While other games might use repeated textures for road surfaces or walls, for example, Rage's landscapes are more akin to what you might see in the real world, with each part of its many roads covered in totally different markings and blemishes. This didn't do the game's size any favours. I think I read somewhere that Rage was 1 terabyte in size, uncompressed, but the final product is closer to 21 gigs. Now this doesn't sound too bad, or very big by modern standards, but bear in mind that Skyrim, which released the same year and featured a huge open world, was less than 6. But what does this all mean for the player? Well, it means that Rage will run on just about anything. It will even run with at least 30 frames per second at 1080p using an Intel Core i5-4460 and integrated HD graphics. The game is rendering data based on my PC's specific capabilities. It knows I have a potato, so it's giving me potato quality, but it's playable even at full HD. This is also why it ran so well on consoles, even if textures didn't look very sharp up close. Hitting 60 FPS on PS3 and Xbox was the priority after all. Switching the resolution to 1280 by 720, which is more akin to that of 7th gen consoles, and we get a closer to 60 FPS experience. In fact, we get 60 FPS more often than not, with the game only dipping significantly during vehicle-based gameplay. As you might expect, what we gain in dynamic visuals, we lose in static options. Even today, the game's graphical menu and choices are quite limited, and there is a noticeable amount of pop-in no matter the settings you end up choosing. But if that means I can slap a £20 CPU in my motherboard and complete this AAA title that I purchased for £2 with less GPU power than a GT 710, so be it. By now you're probably thinking, well, if integrated graphics can run Rage, then a discrete graphics card will have no problems. Well, yeah, at 1080p with most of the settings enabled, we aren't falling that far behind the 60 FPS cap very often. Most of the time the experience is smooth. We can even set the texture cache to large and retain a solid frame rate. This option allows the game to store more texture data in the video memory. Pop-in is reduced, and textures are less blurry at a distance. Before this patch that unlocked the option, higher quality textures could be manually forced by the user with a custom config file. By choosing large, we do get a crisper overall image. Just stay away from the texture detail option though. The toggle even comes with its own warning, and rightly so, because enabling it will cause some pretty hefty slowdown on our otherwise capable system. This is supposed to improve texture quality up close by using upsampling and adaptive sharpening. It's not worth the added CPU load in my opinion, not with this processor. I know that the following can be said about most games, but I don't think it applies to quite the same extent anywhere else. Rage must be one of the most low-end hardware-friendly games available, and one of the most intensive games available when the settings are cranked up. It will run at 60 FPS on an old i5's integrated graphics, yet the same i5 will cause nothing but problems, and it will be responsible for a big stuttery mess if the wrong switch is toggled. Luckily, modern hardware has no trouble with Rage, with or without everything cranked up. Anti-aliasing and texture details are set to high, and the texture cache is also set to large. Our Core i5-10400F and 3060 system are handling the game very well, and the same can even be said for 2160p or 4K. In a way, this game reminds me of Kingdom Come Deliverance. That too could run just fine on a wide range of hardware, but its highest settings were reserved for future hardware. At the lower end of things, Rage is far more system inclusive than Kingdom Come. It's insane just how well it runs, really. At launch, opinions for Rage were mixed, and this wasn't helped by some dodgy graphics card launch drivers. 10 years later, and it's well worth another go, especially if, like me, you gave up on it halfway through. It's also very cheap these days on most major platforms, so if you haven't played it before, why not try it out? Because you don't even need a graphics card, and we all know how difficult those are to get a hold of at the moment. With all that said and done then, thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like on it down below. Leave a dislike if you didn't. Let me know your opinions on Rage down below in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.